Hashtag the silent hunter. Marcus Chun adjusted his scope for the third time in 20 minutes, watching the thermal readings dance across his HUD display. The abandoned steel mill on the outskirts of Detroit had become his home for the past 6 months, ever since the Kithra invasion began. What the alien commanders didn't realize was that they had picked the worst possible planet to invade, one inhabited by humans who had spent centuries perfecting the art of killing each other from impossible distances. The night air carried the acrid smell of burning metal and ozone from the alien energy weapons. Marcus could hear the distant rumble of their hover tanks patrolling the city streets, searching for human resistance fighters. The Kithra had made a critical error in their intelligence gathering. They assumed that conquering Earth's major military installations would break human resistance. They never anticipated that the most dangerous humans weren't wearing uniforms or operating from bases. Marcus had been a competitive marksman before the invasion, holding multiple records in long-distance shooting competitions. His custom-built rifle, a modified Barrett M107A1, could punch through alien armor at distances that would make their advanced targeting systems useless. The weapon lay beside him like a faithful companion, its matte black surface drinking in the moonlight. Through his scope, he watched a Kithra patrol moving through the ruins of what used to be downtown Detroit. The aliens moved with the confidence of a superior force, their crystalline armor glinting under the streetlights they had installed. Their weapons hummed with contained energy, capable of reducing a human to ash in seconds. But they had one fatal weakness. They thought like a technologically superior species, engaging primitives. The lead Kithra warrior stood nearly 8 feet tall, its 4 arms moving with mechanical precision as it scanned the area with handheld sensors. The species had evolved on a world with low gravity and minimal atmospheric resistance, making them naturally tall and graceful. Their translucent blue skin revealed the bioluminescent organs beneath, creating patterns that shifted with their emotional states. Right now, those patterns showed confidence and slight boredom. Marcus calculated the wind speed, humidity, and the slight gravitational variations caused by the alien mothership hovering in low orbit. The target was 2,847 meters away, well beyond the effective range of most conventional weapons, but well within his capabilities. The Kithra had no idea that human snipers routinely made kills at distances exceeding 3 kilometers. He steadied his breathing, feeling his heartbeat slow to its combat rhythm. This wasn't just about killing one alien soldier. This was about sending a message that would ripple through their command structure and shake their confidence. The Kithra had conquered 47 worlds before arriving at Earth. They had developed a psychological profile of how conquered species behaved. They expected either immediate surrender or disorganized resistance that could be quickly crushed. They had never encountered humans. The trigger pull was smooth and deliberate, 3.5 pounds of pressure applied with surgical precision. The .50 caliber round left the barrel at 2,800 feet per second, its tungsten core designed to penetrate the toughest materials known to human science. The suppressor reduced the muzzle flash to almost nothing, and the rifle's advanced recoil management system absorbed most of the weapon's kick. The bullet took 4.2 seconds to reach its target, during which time the alien patrol continued their confident advance. The round struck the lead Kithra warrior center mass, punching through its energy shield like it wasn't there. The alien's crystalline armor, designed to deflect energy weapons and resist conventional projectiles, cracked and shattered under the kinetic impact. The warrior's bioluminescent patterns flared bright orange, the Kithra expression for shock and pain before it collapsed backward. Its 3 companions immediately went into defensive positions, their sensors scanning frantically for the source of the attack. But Marcus was already gone, moving through the steel mill's maze of catwalks and abandoned machinery with the fluid grace of someone who had spent months learning every shadow and hiding place. The Kithra would find nothing but an empty position and a spent brass casing that Marcus had deliberately left behind. Engraved on the casing were coordinates, not to his actual position, but to a message he had left in the ruins of an old church. The message was simple. Earth remembers her children. We are coming for you. This was psychological warfare at its finest. The Kithra prided themselves on being apex predators, the ultimate hunters in a galaxy full of prey species. But Marcus was about to teach them what it meant to be hunted by something that had evolved in the crucible of Earth's most violent environments. As he settled into his secondary position 3 miles away, Marcus smiled grimly. The night was young, and he had 19 more rounds in his magazine. The Kithara had chosen to fight humans on their own world, surrounded by terrain that humans had been using for guerrilla warfare since the species learned to walk upright. They were about to discover why humans had never been successfully conquered by any force in their history. Every invasion of Earth had ended the same way, with the invaders either dead or fleeing in terror. The Kithara would be no different. The hunt had begun, and Marcus Chun was the predator now. Hashtag the message spreads. Commander Zethka received the casualty report with growing unease, her crystalline fingers drumming against the command console of the orbital battlecruiser Dominion's Edge. 3 patrols had been hit in the past 72 hours, each attack following the same pattern. A single, precise shot from extreme range, followed by complete silence. The human responsible seemed to vanish like smoke, leaving behind only coordinates to taunting messages. The bridge crew worked in tense silence around her. The Kithara had expected some resistance. Every species fought back initially. But this was different. This wasn't the desperate, uncoordinated attacks they had seen on other worlds. This was surgical, calculated, and deeply unsettling. The humans they had captured spoke of something called a sniper, but the translation algorithms couldn't properly convey the psychological impact of the word. Analysis report on the projectile weapons, Zethka demanded from her weapons specialist. Science officer Tilvin's patterns shifted to nervous yellow as he consulted his displays. Commander, the kinetic projectiles are primitive but devastatingly effective. The humans use chemical propellants to accelerate dense metal cores to extreme velocities. Our shields are calibrated for energy weapons and plasma charges. These solid projectiles pass through them like they don't exist. Increase shield density, Zethka commanded. Negative effect, Commander. The kinetic energy is too great. It's like trying to stop a meteor with a force field designed for photons. We would need to completely recalibrate our defensive systems, and even then, the mass and velocity calculations suggest marginal improvement. Zethka's patterns flared red with frustration. The Kithara had conquered worlds with species far more technologically advanced than humans. They had faced energy weapons that could crack mountains and biological weapons that could adapt to any defense. But they had never encountered something so brutally simple and effective. Down on Earth's surface, Marcus Chun was studying satellite imagery he had hacked from an abandoned military installation. The Kithara's orbital platforms followed predictable patterns, and their ground forces moved with textbook precision. They were following doctrine developed over centuries of conquering less adaptable species. But humans were different. They were chaos theorists by nature, capable of finding patterns in randomness and exploiting the smallest weaknesses. Marcus had identified 17 different infiltration routes into the Kithara's main command post, along with supply lines that seemed heavily fortified, but were actually vulnerable to someone who understood human urban warfare. His radio crackled with coded messages from resistance cells across the continent. The word was spreading. The Kithara could be hurt. More importantly, they could be frightened. Fear was a universal constant, and even the most advanced alien species experienced the primitive brain functions that came with being hunted by an apex predator. Marcus set up his next ambush in the ruins of Ford Field, the old football stadium. The Kithara had been using it as a staging area for their hover tanks, thinking the elevated position gave them tactical advantage. They had no idea that humans had been conducting precision fire from elevated positions since they invented the bow and arrow. He watched through his scope as a Kithara engineering team worked to install some kind of sensor array. The aliens moved with practiced efficiency, their forearms allowing them to manipulate tools with incredible dexterity. Their technology was impressive: gravity manipulators, quantum processors, energy shields that could deflect most known weapons. But they had never faced someone who could put a .50 caliber round through a target center of mass from 3 miles away, while accounting for wind, humidity, planetary rotation, and the gravitational effects of their own mothership. Marcus selected his target carefully. Not the team leader this time. That would be expected. Instead, he aimed for the technician operating the primary sensor array. The shot would disable their equipment and send a clear message. Nowhere was safe. No task was too mundane to escape human attention. The trigger squeeze was perfect, muscle memory developed through thousands of rounds fired in competition and training. The bullet traveled its ballistic arc with mathematical precision, striking the Kithra technician's upper torso and sending the alien spinning into the equipment array. Sparks erupted from the damaged sensors as the other aliens scrambled for cover. But Marcus was already moving again, using the stadium's maintenance tunnels to relocate before the Kithra's response teams could triangulate his position. He left behind another message, this one carved into the concrete wall. Your technology cannot save you from human determination. The psychological impact was exactly what Marcus had calculated. Reports began filtering through Kithra communication channels about a ghost sniper who could strike anywhere, anytime. Patrol schedules became erratic as unit commanders tried to randomize their movements. Engineering teams requested additional security, slowing down infrastructure projects. Most importantly, the Kithra began to doubt their own superiority. For a species that had conquered nearly 50 worlds through overwhelming technological advantage, the idea that primitive kinetic weapons could neutralize their most advanced defenses was deeply disturbing. Their confidence, the most important weapon in any conquest, was beginning to crack. Marcus smiled as he monitored their encrypted communications from his next hide site. The Kithra were starting to sound like every other occupying force that had ever tried to control human territory, paranoid, reactive, and making the kinds of tactical mistakes that resistance fighters could exploit. The single sniper was becoming an army of shadows in the aliens' collective imagination. Every sound in the night, every glint of reflected light, every unexplained equipment failure became evidence of human resistance. The Kithra were learning what countless invaders throughout history had discovered. Humans fought dirty, and they never, ever gave up. Commander Zethka was about to learn why Earth was considered the most dangerous world in the galaxy, not because of its military technology, but because of its people. #The Hunter becomes Hunted. Commander Zethka stood in the primary tactical center of the orbital command ship, her bioluminescent patterns cycling through frustrated orange as she studied the holographic display of Earth's surface. 47 successful conquests, and now one primitive human with an ancient projectile weapon was making her forces look like amateur hunters stalking an apex predator. "Deploy the hunter killers," she commanded, her voice carrying the harmonic resonance that indicated absolute authority among her species. "I want that sniper found and eliminated within the next rotation cycle." The hunter-killers were the Kithra's elite assassination units, deployed only when conventional forces proved inadequate. Each warrior was enhanced with cybernetic implants that boosted their already impressive physical capabilities to superhuman levels. Their armor incorporated adaptive camouflage technology that could bend light around them, making them nearly invisible. Most importantly, they hunted with the same methodical patience that had made them legendary across the galaxy. Down on Earth, Marcus Chun was already aware that the game had changed. His intercepted communications had revealed the deployment of specialized forces, and his long experience in competitive shooting had taught him to recognize when he was being actively hunted by skilled opponents. The Kithra weren't just sending random patrols anymore. They were sending professionals. He moved through the abandoned subway tunnels beneath Detroit, his footsteps silent on the debris-covered tracks. The underground maze gave him advantages that the aliens couldn't match. They were used to fighting in open terrain where their superior technology could dominate the battlefield. But humans have been fighting in tunnels, caves, and underground systems since they first learned to use fire as a weapon. The hunter-killers deployed at sunset, moving through the city with predatory grace. Their enhanced senses could detect heat signatures from miles away, and their adaptive armor made them nearly impossible to spot with conventional optics. They communicated through quantum-encrypted channels that should have been impossible for humans to intercept. But Marcus had advantages they couldn't anticipate. He understood the urban environment in ways that no alien, no matter how enhanced, could match. Every building, every street corner, every drainage pipe was a potential weapon in the hands of someone who had grown up in human cities. The Kithara saw infrastructure, Marcus saw a three-dimensional battlefield where every elevation change and sightline could be exploited. More importantly, he understood human psychology better than any alien ever could. The Kithara were methodical hunters, but they had evolved on a world where prey was predictable. Earth's apex predators, especially humans, were anything but predictable. They were chaos agents capable of radical tactical shifts that could confuse even the most advanced combat algorithms. Marcus set his trap in the abandoned Renaissance Center, the towering complex of buildings that had once been Detroit's pride. The Kithara would expect him to use the elevation advantage for another long-range shot. Instead, he was going to give them what they wanted, a close encounter that would play to their strengths while secretly favoring his own. The hunter-killer, designated Beta 7, was the first to reach the complex, its enhanced sensors detecting residual heat signatures that suggested recent human activity. The warrior moved through the building with mechanical precision, its four arms holding different weapons designed to handle various combat scenarios. Its adaptive armor shifted colors to match the abandoned office environment, making it nearly invisible except for the faint shimmer of disturbed air. But Marcus wasn't hunting with his eyes. He was hunting with his ears and his understanding of building acoustics. The hunter-killer was nearly silent, but nearly wasn't good enough. Marcus had spent months learning the sound profile of the abandoned building, memorizing which floors creaked and which walls carried sound differently. The aliens' enhanced mass and movement patterns created acoustic signatures that Marcus could track without ever seeing his target. The confrontation came on the 37th floor, in what used to be a corporate boardroom. The hunter-killer entered the room with weapons ready, its sensors indicating that the human sniper was somewhere nearby. But the room appeared empty, with only shattered glass and overturned furniture to suggest that humans had ever been there. Marcus struck from above, dropping through a ceiling tile that he had carefully prepared hours earlier. His combat knife, a simple steel blade that his grandfather had carried in 3 different wars, punched through the gap between the alien's helmet and chest armor. The hunter-killer's advanced technology was useless against 7 inches of carbon steel applied with precision and absolute commitment. The alien warrior collapsed, its enhanced systems failing as its primary life support was compromised. Marcus was already moving, disappearing back into the building's infrastructure before the other hunter-killers could respond to their colleagues' final transmission. But he left behind more than just a body. Attached to the dead hunter-killer was a small device, a remote detonator connected to explosives that Marcus had placed throughout the building's support structure. The Kithara had just lost their most advanced warrior to a trap that used explosives humans had invented centuries before interstellar travel. The building came down in a controlled demolition that would have impressed professional engineers. The remaining hunter-killers barely escaped the collapsing structure, their adaptive armor protecting them from the debris, but not from the psychological impact of watching their apparently invincible colleague get outmaneuvered by a primitive human. Commander Zethka received the casualty report with growing alarm. The hunter-killer program represented centuries of military evolution and technological advancement. Losing one to a human using chemical explosives and hand-forged metal was more than a tactical failure. It was a fundamental challenge to everything the Kithara believed about their own superiority. Analysis of the engagement she demanded from her tactical officers. The human demonstrated detailed knowledge of our combat protocols, came the reply from tactical specialist Miratan, his patterns shifting to worried yellow. The attack was precisely calculated to exploit the 17-millisecond gap in our armor's protection systems. This level of tactical analysis suggests either extensive study of our technology or intuitive understanding of combat systems that borders on prescient. Zethka's patterns flared bright red. The human wasn't just fighting with primitive weapons. He was fighting with advanced tactical intelligence that rivaled their own military academies. Somehow, a single member of what they had considered a backward species was consistently outmaneuvering their most elite forces. Down in the subway tunnels, Marcus was already planning his next move. The hunter-killers had been a test, and he had passed with the kind of lethal efficiency that would send shock waves through the Kithara command structure. But he knew that they would escalate again, bringing even more advanced technology to bear against him. That was exactly what he wanted. Every escalation revealed more about their capabilities, their psychology, and their weaknesses. The Kithara were learning that fighting humans meant fighting an enemy that could adapt, improvise, and overcome obstacles that would stop any other species. They were about to discover why Earth had never been successfully conquered by any force in the galaxy. Hashtag the Network Awakens Commander Zeth Ka stood before the High Council of the Kithara expedition, her bioluminescent patterns carefully controlled to project confidence despite the growing crisis. The holographic displays around the council chamber showed tactical maps, casualty reports, and, most disturbing of all, intercepted human communications that suggested the single sniper was no longer operating alone. "Explain to us," spoke High Counselor Vextar, his ancient patterns shimmering with barely contained authority, "how one primitive human has managed to neutralize an entire hunter-killer unit and inspire system-wide resistance among a species we assessed as technologically inferior." Zethka's tactical implants processed the data streams flowing across her consciousness. The situation had evolved beyond a single troublesome sniper. Resistance cells across North America were adopting the sniper's techniques, using human-manufactured weapons to engage Kithara forces from extreme ranges. More concerning was the psychological impact. Her warriors were beginning to exhibit stress patterns that indicated acute combat fatigue. The humans operate under a different psychological framework than previous conquered species, Zethkar reported, her patterns shifting to analytical blue. They do not view technological superiority as indicative of inevitable defeat. Instead, they appear to interpret it as a tactical challenge to be solved through creative application of their existing capabilities. Down in the sprawling tunnel networks beneath Detroit, Marcus Chun was conducting what humans called a sniper school for resistance fighters who had traveled from across the continent to learn his techniques. The abandoned subway system had become an underground academy where former soldiers, hunters, and competitive shooters gathered to transform civilian marksmen into precision killers. "Range estimation is everything," Marcus explained to the group of 15 fighters clustered around him in the maintenance chamber. The Kithara shields are calibrated for energy weapons. Their armor is designed to deflect plasma charges and particle beams. But kinetic energy is kinetic energy, and Newton's laws work the same way whether you're human or alien. Sarah Martinez, a former Marine sniper who had made her way from California, nodded as she examined the modified rifle Marcus had prepared for her. Their patrol patterns are predictable because they're following doctrine. They conquered 47 worlds using the same tactics, so they assume those tactics will work here. "Exactly," Marcus confirmed. "But we're not like the other species they've conquered. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years, and we've gotten very good at killing things that think they're apex predators." The training session was interrupted by coded communications from resistance cells across the region. The Kithara were deploying new weapons, orbital bombardment platforms capable of sterilizing entire city blocks. They were abandoning their previous strategy of conquest and occupation in favor of simple extermination. Marcus studied the intelligence reports with growing satisfaction. The Kithara were revealing their true nature now, dropping the pretense of being benevolent conquerors bringing order to a chaotic world. They were showing themselves to be exactly what humans had suspected from the beginning: extermination forces that had simply never encountered effective resistance before. "This changes nothing," Marcus told the assembled fighters. "Orbital bombardment platforms are just bigger targets. They still follow predictable patterns, and they still have to obey the laws of physics. Sarah, take your team to the abandoned missile silos in Nebraska. The Titan II sites still have functional targeting systems that we can modify for anti-orbital work." The resistance network that had grown around Marcus's initial actions was unlike anything the Kithara had encountered on previous worlds. Instead of a centralized command structure that could be decapitated, it was a distributed system of autonomous cells that shared information and resources while maintaining operational independence. Each cell had adapted Marcus's techniques to their local environment and capabilities, creating a multiplication effect that turned a single sniper into a continental network of precision killers. Commander Zeth Ka watched the tactical displays with growing unease as red indicators appeared across the continental map. 17 separate sniper attacks in the past 24 hours, each one demonstrating the same precision and tactical intelligence that had characterized the original incidents. The humans were learning, adapting, and spreading their knowledge faster than the Kithara could develop countermeasures. Deploy the orbital bombardment platforms, High Counselor Vextar commanded, his ancient patterns flowing with lethal authority. If these humans will not submit to conquest, they will be eliminated. Sterilize the primary resistance zones and establish new colonies with imported population from our tributary worlds. The orbital platforms emerge from the mothership's docking bays like metallic predators descending from the heavens. Each platform carried enough firepower to turn a city into molten slag, and their targeting systems could track individual humans from orbit. The Kithara had used these weapons to break the resistance of every species that had challenged their authority. But they had never used them against humans who had spent centuries developing technologies specifically designed to reach into space and destroy targets in orbit. The abandoned military installations across North America contained weapons that the Kithara had dismissed as primitive, intercontinental ballistic missiles that could carry conventional warheads to orbital altitudes. Sarah Martinez and her team worked with desperate efficiency in the Nebraska missile silo, retrofitting a Titan II missile with a warhead designed by former NASA engineers. The weapon wouldn't have the exotic properties of Kithara technology, but it would carry 3 tons of conventional explosives to orbital altitude at velocities that would make interception nearly impossible. Launch sequence initiated, Sarah reported over the Resistance communication network. Target acquisition confirmed. Orbital platform Alpha 7 is maintaining predictable trajectory for bombardment run. The missile rose from its silo like humanity's answer to alien aggression, climbing through the atmosphere on a pillar of chemical fire that represented thousands of years of human technological development. The Kithara orbital platform detected the launch, but couldn't comprehend the tactical implications until the warhead detonated against its hull with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The explosion lit up the night sky as the orbital platform broke apart and tumbled toward Earth in burning fragments. Across the Resistance network, human fighters watched the meteor shower of alien technology and understood that they had just witnessed the moment when the war's momentum shifted decisively in their favor. Commander Zethka received the casualty report with patterns that shifted through the entire spectrum of Kithara emotional expression. An orbital bombardment platform, a weapon that had broken the resistance of entire star systems, had been destroyed by humans using chemical rockets and conventional explosives. Recall all surface forces, she commanded, her patterns settling into the deep purple that indicated strategic withdrawal. Prepare the fleet for departure. This species is too dangerous to engage with conventional conquest doctrine. But High Counselor Vextar's patterns flared with deadly authority. Negative. We do not retreat from primitive species. Deploy the Void Renders. If these humans will not submit to conquest or bombardment, they will face total molecular disintegration. In the tunnels beneath Detroit, Marcus Chun smiled grimly as he monitored the Kithara communications. The aliens were escalating again, bringing weapons designed to eliminate entire planets. But they still didn't understand what they were really fighting. Not just humans, but the collective will of a species that had never accepted defeat as a permanent condition. The Kithara were about to learn why Earth was considered the most dangerous world in the galaxy. The final lesson. High Counselor Vextar's patterns blazed with ancient authority as he personally supervised the deployment of the Void Renders, weapons that existed at the intersection of technology and cosmic horror. These devices could unravel the molecular bonds that held matter together, reducing entire planets to component atoms scattered across space. In the Kithara's 47 previous conquests, the mere threat of Void Render deployment had been sufficient to break any remaining resistance. The massive weapons emerged from the deepest holds of the mothership, each one a kilometer-long construct of crystalline matrices and quantum field generators. They moved into Earth's orbit like sleeping gods awakening to deliver judgment, their activation sequences beginning the countdown to planetary sterilization. But in the underground command center that Marcus Chun had established beneath Detroit, human scientists and engineers worked with the focused intensity of a species that had spent its entire evolutionary history finding ways to survive impossible odds. The Resistance network had grown beyond anything the Kithara could have imagined, a distributed intelligence system that connected every surviving human settlement with instantaneous communication and shared computational resources. Quantum resonance analysis complete, reported Dr. Sarah Kim, a former MIT physicist who had escaped from the Boston occupation zone. The void renders operate by destabilizing local space-time geometry. They're essentially creating controlled tiers in reality that propagate outward from the target zone. Marcus studied the holographic displays that filled the abandoned subway platform, showing real-time analysis of the alien weapon's energy signatures. Weaknesses: the quantum field generators require perfect synchronization across all 6 devices, Dr. Kim continued. If even one unit is disrupted during the activation sequence, the resonance cascade will collapse and potentially feedback through their entire network. How do we disrupt something in orbit that can unmake matter at the molecular level? Asked Sarah Martinez, whose successful orbital platform strike had already made her a legend among the resistance fighters. Marcus smiled with the cold satisfaction of someone who had spent months learning to think like both predator and prey. The same way humans have always dealt with impossible challenges. We use the enemy's strength against them. The plan that emerged from the underground command center was audacious, even by human standards. Instead of trying to destroy the void renders directly, they would use the aliens' own quantum communication network to inject a virus into the weapon's synchronization systems. The virus had been designed by human programmers who understood something the Kithara had never encountered: the concept of malicious code designed to exploit the overconfidence of superior technology. Commander Zethka watched the void render deployment with patterns that cycled between satisfaction and unease. The weapons would solve the human problem permanently, reducing Earth to a cloud of free-floating atoms that could be harvested for raw materials. But something about the complete absence of human resistance activity in the past 12 hours troubled her tactical instincts. Surface scan reports, she demanded from her sensor operators. Negative contact, Commander. Human electromagnetic signatures are minimal. Thermal signatures consistent with abandoned settlements. No orbital launch preparations detected. The silence from Earth's surface should have been reassuring, but Zethka had learned to distrust anything that seemed too convenient when dealing with humans. The species had already demonstrated an ability to turn apparent weaknesses into tactical advantages, and their complete lack of visible panic in the face of planetary annihilation suggested they were planning something. In the quantum depths of the Kithara communication network, the human virus spread like digital wildfire. It was a masterpiece of malicious programming, designed to appear as routine synchronization data, while actually introducing microscopic timing errors into the void render activation sequence. The errors were small enough to pass automated security checks, but large enough to create catastrophic resonance failures when the weapons attempted to fire. Marcus Chun stood in the primary operations center, surrounded by displays showing the real-time status of all 6 void renders as they approached firing readiness. The weapons were beautiful in a terrifying way, their crystalline structures glowing with contained energy that could reshape reality itself. But beauty had never stopped humans from destroying things that threatened their survival. Virus deployment confirmed across all target systems, reported the lead programmer, a teenager named Alex Morrison who had learned advanced quantum coding by hacking Kithara educational networks. Synchronization errors propagating through their primary control matrix. Initiate final phase, Marcus commanded. The human resistance had one more surprise for their would-be conquerors. Hidden in the ruins of major cities across the planet were devices that most Kithara would have dismissed as primitive, powerful radio transmitters that had been modified to broadcast on specific quantum frequencies. When activated simultaneously, these transmitters created a resonance pattern that would amplify the virus's effects and ensure that the void render's synchronization failure would be spectacular rather than merely destructive. High Counselor Vextar personally initiated the void render firing sequence, his ancient patterns blazing with the satisfaction of delivering final judgment to a species that had dared to resist Kithara authority. The weapons began their activation cycle, quantum fields building to levels that would tear holes in the fabric of space-time itself. But instead of Earth's destruction, the Kithara witnessed something that would haunt their collective memory for generations. The synchronization failure cascaded through all 6 void renders simultaneously, turning weapons of planetary annihilation into bombs that consumed themselves in quantum fire. The explosions were visible from the ground as new stars blooming and dying in Earth's orbit, their light illuminating the faces of humans who had just witnessed their species defeat technology that bordered on cosmic divinity. The resonance cascade didn't stop with the void renders. It propagated through the Kythera's quantum communication network, causing catastrophic failures throughout their orbital fleet. Ships that had conquered nearly 50 worlds found their most advanced systems shutting down in cascading waves of technological failure. The mothership itself shuddered as its primary power cores went offline, leaving the mighty vessel drifting in Earth's gravity well like a wounded giant. Commander Zethka watched her command dissolve into chaos as system after system failed throughout the fleet. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows across the bridge as her crew struggled to restore basic functionality to their crippled ships. The humans had somehow turned the Kythera's most advanced weapons into bombs that destroyed their own fleet. Ow! Was all she could manage to transmit to High Counselor Vextar's emergency command post. The answer came from Earth's surface in a broadcast that reached every surviving Kythera ship. Marcus Chen's voice, speaking in fluent Kythera that he had learned by analyzing their communication protocols. You made the same mistake that every other species has made when they try to conquer Earth. You assumed that technological superiority equals tactical invincibility. You never understood that humans don't fight fair, and we never give up. We've been the apex predators on this planet for 200,000 years, and we didn't get there by accepting defeat. The broadcast continued as Kythera emergency crews worked desperately to restore their ship's functionality. Your void renders were impressive, but they had the same weakness as all of your other weapons. They were designed by a species that had never faced real resistance. You spent so long conquering species that surrendered at the first sign of superior technology that you forgot how to fight enemies that can adapt and overcome. High Counselor Vextar's patterns had faded to the pale gray that indicated complete psychological breakdown. The impossible had happened. A species that the Kythera had classified as primitive had not only resisted their conquest, but had turned their most advanced weapons against them. The concept was so fundamentally contrary to Kythera understanding of the universe that it threatened their entire worldview. This is Marcus Chun, speaking for the human resistance and the planet Earth, the broadcast concluded. Your ships are crippled, your weapons are destroyed, and your invasion force is stranded in our gravity well. You have exactly 24 hours to begin evacuating your surviving forces from our system. If you're still here after that deadline, we'll start demonstrating why humans invented the concept of overkill. The transmission ended with coordinates for a safe corridor that would allow the Kythera ships to reach the edge of Earth's solar system. It was a mercy that no other species in the galaxy had ever shown to retreating Kythera forces, and its implications were not lost on the surviving alien commanders. As the crippled Kythera fleet began its limping retreat from Earth orbit, Marcus Chun stood on the roof of the Renaissance Center, watching the alien ships disappear into the darkness between stars. The building had been reconstructed using salvaged alien technology, a monument to human adaptability and a reminder that even the most advanced weapons could be turned against their creators. The Resistance Network continued to monitor galactic communications for months afterward, tracking the Kythera fleet as it spread the word throughout the galaxy. Earth was not to be approached, not to be threatened, and certainly not to be invaded. The humans had demonstrated something that no other species in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had turned a technologically superior invasion force into refugees fleeing for their lives. The night attack on Earth had indeed backfired, but not in any way the Kythera had anticipated. They had come to conquer primitives and instead encountered the most dangerous species in the galaxy, one that had spent its entire evolutionary history perfecting the art of making the impossible possible, usually through the creative application of overwhelming violence. Marcus Chun smiled as he watched the last Kythera ship disappear beyond Pluto's orbit. Earth was safe, humanity had survived, and the galaxy now knew that there was one species that would never be conquered, no matter how advanced the technology arrayed against them. The hunt was over, and humanity had won.